Right. So good morning, everybody, and welcome everyone. I'm Mamta Pomier, a member of the EAS EDI working group, and together with my colleague Monica Jurkovic, we are pleased to welcome you to this new initiative of regular EDI talk series organized by the EAS EDI working group in collaboration with the IAU Women in Astronomy working group. That's just because we got interest from even members outside of EU to participate in this activity. That's the reason why we have merged it with the IAU. So the goal of this initiative is to bring together experts and community members engaged in EDI activities to share knowledge, best practice, and insight through their regular talks. And we aim to create a collaborative platform to foster an inclusive working environment. So that's the reason why we have started this activity. And we thank you all for your response to our call that we had circulated in the month of October. And we have received several interests from several speakers who want to join in this talk series. And we'll be reaching you out for, as potential speakers for the upcoming events in the next months. And today we are very happy to introduce you to our first speaker of this talk series, Ms. Marieta Valdivia Lefort. She's a researcher at University College London and social scientist. She is currently focusing on study of policy making, decision making in areas of astronomy and space. She has lots of experience on working on projects related to education, gender issues, public policy, international law, diplomacy, and science policy. That's all very interesting. We want to get educated about all these issues and how to implement it in our institutions and workplaces. This is why we thought of inviting her as our first speaker. And she's collaborating with the Royal Astronomical Society as Policy and Diversity Officer, with the International Astronomical Union, with the Space Code Foundation, and the Chilean Space Association. So today she will be talking about Royal Astronomical Society, improving EDI-related practices for the future. So we welcome Marieta, and we hand over to you.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Can you hear me properly? Yes. So can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation. Indeed, my name is Marieta, and I am the Policy and Diversity Officer in the Royal Astronomical Society. I started this role quite recently. Everything that has to do with diversity and EDI practices, I started a month ago. So I wasn't quite sure about what to present and how to present it. So I decided, we decided with my colleague at the society that we would just give you a very brief overview of what has been done and what are our plans for improvement. And so I really hope that it's not a very long presentation, but I have probably like 20 slides, but we'll go quickly, not hopefully in less than 30 minutes. First of all, the work that was being done by Sheila before, because she was a person that was working with education and diversity. She did an amazing work, and I'm really I think that is really important to recognize that, because she was really, really, really good. Well, she's still good, but she left the society, and she also had a lot of involvement with education activities, and I think that we will try to continue with her work. So first of all, we have to say that for the society. So instead of saying Royal Astronomical Society, I'm just going to refer to the RAS as just the society. And for us, it's really, really important, everything that has to do with being a welcoming and inclusive forum. And it's part of our values, and is probably one of the key ones. So we celebrate and encourage diversity, understanding that every individual is unique, and recognizing that, appreciating and our individual differences. One of our promises is definitely providing an inclusive environment where every member of the society is welcome, supported, and acts with respect to all other members. As that is part of our values, we tried to include that in not just our official documents as policies, but also in terms of what we do in our activities, how we plan our activities, and so on. But still, there's always room for improvement. In general, I decided to divide the different activities or everything that has to do with EDI related actions. I decided to just probably divide in three big groups. So one has to do with governance, the other has to do with groups, which are the ones that are responsible for organizing and maybe identifying the needs related to EDI actions, and finally reports. That I have to say, I'm really proud of the reports because they are really, really good. The last one is still not, it's not out yet, but it will be quite soon. And I will present just a little bit of this report. In terms of governance, we have two important documents. One has to do with the diversity, equality, and inclusion policy. And I think that this description of what the society is committed to and what we understand for diversity, equality, and inclusion is very important, because that means that it goes beyond just the ideas of race, gender reassignment, sex, sexual orientation, disability, age, religious, because we also include political beliefs, marriage and civil partnership, pregnancy and maternity, or family circumstances, including care and responsibilities. So for us, that's very, very important. And we have 5 key objectives: promoting an inclusive environment for all, promoting equality of opportunity, welcoming applications from all backgrounds, supporting and developing careers for all, recruiting and promoting staff based on merit rather than absence or presence of underrepresented characteristics. And this is one of the key points in the document, in our policy. I have a lot of codes here, so I included this so if you want to, you can just access the documents that I'm going to be talking about. So our policy is quite short, it's no more than 4 pages. So if you just want to have a look, please go ahead. And the Committee for Diversity in Astronomy and Geophysics, which is one of the groups that we have, we basically provide. I'm part of the committee as a representative of the Royal Society, and we provide recommendations to the council, and then the diversity officer, in this case me, have the responsibility of carrying out any diversity work. I'll talk just a little bit more about the committee later, but it's my responsibility as well to ensure that that the conversations that we have, all the decisions that are made, all the suggestions, that are being made at the committee are in line with this policy. The second document has to do with the strategy plan. Probably I think that is important to look at these documents just because those are the main guidelines. Again, I think there's always room for improvement, but right now it is what we are working with. And this strategy plan is a little bit longer, but I think it's really important to just have a look. So there's also the access to the document. In this strategy plan, we have the priority areas. I think that there are 3 main points that are relevant, very, very relevant for EDI-related aspects. One has to do with membership. So the society is very, very committed to meet the needs of our members. And in this respect, all the reports that we have, the 3 reports, are crucial for understanding what are our needs. So one of the points is improve the support for early career scientists, because part of the idea of inclusion is also young scientists that are not well established in industry or academia yet. So one of the main points for that is improve that support that is being given to early career scientists. The early career network, which is the other group that is included in the presentation, has the responsibility to support this. And the objective is also improve the diversity of applicants. The other point is to ensure that the RAS supports and promotes diversity and inclusivity within its core community and wider academia, including support roles. And in that respect, again, one of the reports that we have from 2022, 2023, that I'll be covered in a few minutes. It's also very important to understand how to support this, the aspects related to diversity and inclusivity, particularly inclusivity in workplaces. And in that respect, we are also very committed to do that. So we're using all the results of this report to suggest actions in line with this. And the third point, which is not necessarily, if you read it, you can at the beginning, it's not necessarily the most obvious one, but it has to do with library and heritage. Achieve a maximum impact from the library, archive, and objective collections. We commit to inclusive collection development and to update the collection development policy to ensure that the society collections are relevant to diverse groups of users. And in this one, the idea is to identify gaps in the collection, especially the work that has been done by underrepresented groups, and seek to understand why they have occurred and make provision in the collection development policy for filling these gaps. So this is quite similar to what universities are doing, not all the universities, but what universities are doing regarding decolonizing the curriculum, right? So it's basically including more work done by underrepresented groups. I think that this is a really, really interesting point, and I'm particularly quite keen of this one. The fourth one is publishing, and is also in line with the idea of decolonizing the curriculum, or just have more diversity here. So we will promote diversity and inclusivity in authorship, review, and editorial boards by actively seeking and financially supporting submissions from underrepresented regions and communities, including through low-income and developing countries initiatives, expanding and broadening the reviewer base, encouraging those underrepresented by geographic location, ethnicity, gender, and career stage, and increase and promote diversity within our editorial boards. Although with the strategy plan as well as the policy, we don't really have specific actions or a kind of like timeline. We have this plan, and I think that that we will be working on that with the different committees and the different groups to have a specific definition of when we will achieve this and how we will achieve this. The second point that is really important is about the groups. So as I was saying, we have three main groups, which is the Committee on Diversity in Astronomy and Astrophysics, the Early Career Network, and the LGBT+ Physical Sciences Network. In this one, we are working with the Institute of Physics and with the Royal Society of Chemistry. I would like to, well, very briefly, these committees and groups are really important for ensuring that we are actually working towards specific goals in EDI-related activities. So the committee is, I would say, probably not the most important, but the one that has to sum all the ideas, even the ones that are discussed in the Early Career Network and in the Physical Sciences Network, because the representatives of both groups are also part of this committee. So, so we ensure that all the discussions are covered in this committee. We don't have representation, or we are not discussing about certain things that I will cover at the end of the presentation. But we have we have our next meeting next week, so I'll be including those points too. And basically in this committee, we decide a plan for action. We are covering that. The committee has been quite active in terms of what to do and how to do it, and defining the responsibles for carrying out those activities. And there is one report that I wanted to include just because it wasn't carried by the society, but it was conducted by the LGBT+ Physical Sciences Network. So this report, it was very, very important. It was achieved in 2019. We have the idea to have another report, another survey, because well, that was almost 6 years ago, so we definitely need to conduct a new one. But I don't really know yet if we will conduct it. I have a meeting for that on Monday, so unfortunately I don't have the information now, but there was an idea to actually have another survey. And this one is a really interesting report about the needs of LGBT plus physical scientists working in the physical sciences in the UK and Ireland. And some interesting results here have to do with the work environment. So this is really important, not only to identify the situation in the workplace and how the respondents in the physical sciences feel in their workplace, but also to think about retention or actions for retention of talent. Well, that was quite from human resources. I didn't want to use that word, but let's use retention of talent in the workplace. And basically, we have here that respondents stating that they had at some point considered leaving their workplace. The percentage of LGBT plus respondents is higher compared to non-LGBT plus respondents. And then when we go into more detail, we can see that LGBT respondents sometimes consider leaving their workplace, but we got into the detail with that, but I will not go into detail about this statistics in this talk because we don't have the time. But I included, again, here you can find the report and you can see all these statistics. But basically, we can have an idea that indeed some respondents have considered leaving their workplaces because of how they feel in working there. So that can include feeling discrimination, feeling discriminated by certain actions. They talk about harassment as well, but I think that the main point here is how can we use this information to provide specific guidelines. So I think that this is a very, very, very good report. Then we have these specific reports that are part of the society. One is the bullying and harassment report that it was conducted through 2022 and finalized in 2023. And this is particularly interesting in terms of not just what people experience in the workplace, but the things that they have been witnessing in the workplace. So it covers both. So if people, if the respondents have felt, they have felt bullied or harassed, and also if they have witnessed any behavior that could be considered as to be in line with this. So, for example, again, this is the executive summary of the report. This is not all the executive summary, but there are some statistics that were the main ones at the beginning. And we have, for example, that more than half the respondents had witnessed instances of bullying, harassment, and unwanted behavior. And also, we have here, for example, the difference in terms of like disabled people experience bullying and harassment more frequently during the last 2 years. That the same was done regarding, for example, gay, lesbian, and bisexual people experience more frequent incidents of bullying and harassment. And then we have minority or underrepresented groups. So in this respect, with this evidence, again, we can think about what are the groups that are being or what are the specific experiences of certain groups in the workplace, and we also, with the information of like witnessing certain behavior, we can corroborate that information as well. So again, I think that this report is very important, and in the conclusions, and obviously I really hope that you can just read this report. In the conclusions, we can probably something that we already knew, but with this one we can confirm that marginalized and underserved groups such as disabled people, women, Black and minority, ethnic, and LGBTQ plus people are much more likely to be bullied and harassed than men when white, straight, and non-disabled people. So again, we have this information that can give us some really good insights for what they're experiencing in the workplace, and also how can we use this information again for future action plans. The last one that that we have already published is the inclusion best practice. For specifically this one is very focused on inclusion related activities. I think that Sheila at some point said something that she's completely right about, that has to do with, in general, we tend to focus more in equity and diversity aspects, but we don't necessarily go into detail with inclusion practices. And this is something that I definitely agree with. So inclusion probably has to do more with how to carry out these specific activities, and again, ensure that this somehow leads to retention of people in the workplace or in academia and so on. So this one is a community contributed guide to inclusion in astronomy and geophysics. And again, this goes into detail about inclusion, why inclusion is so important. And this includes experiences or inclusion practices, and also recommendations based on those experiences. So again, very, very good report and very specific, particularly with the recommendations, and also includes not just activities itself, but also ideas for policy and ideas to how to apply this in a more formal way. The last article that is not already published is our most recent survey about demographics. And because it's not published, I cannot show all the details, but we have the preliminary version, and I'm just going to include a few numbers. But this one is also very necessary to understand what is the real picture regarding the demographics. Of course, this is quite obvious, but I think this is very important to understand if the initiatives that we have regarding improving diversity actually make a difference, or we need to change the approach. And this is important because sometimes, well, we have the numbers of the previous reports, but now we have to see what is the reality in terms of how many, for example, how many women do we have in astronomy? How many in academia or in industry, or how many women do we have in I'm just giving an example with women, but and this is important to understand what will be the real target. So far what we have is numbers in astronomy and solar system science and solid earth geophysics and in cross-disciplinary areas. So far we know that postgraduate student numbers grew in astronomy and solar system science, but they fell in solid earth geophysics and in cross-disciplinary areas. I'm just giving this numbers because I cannot share more information yet. We also have some details about how women are. I know that probably this is a quite binary explanation, but at the same time is we need to include that as well. So we know that women, we have a slow increase over time in the proportion of professors who are women, but at the same time we have some the other effect in ethnic diversity, because apparently it's falling. So we have permanent staff, and I think this number is quite important because 97% of British respondents to the questionnaire across astronomy and physics were white. So that gives us again a very clear picture of maybe what are the priorities that we should be looking at in this specific area. Then we have other initiatives that are not necessarily related to reports and not necessarily related to groups or governance, but they are organized and carried out by members of these three groups that I was telling you about. So the National Astronomy Meeting that is organized every year. For last year, I would say this was quite successful, and Sheila was behind all the organization. We had 4, let's say, panel sessions that were covering EDI-related activities. The first 3 were just sessions, but really, really interesting, because the first one was quite focused on networking among early career researchers. And the second one was more about showing or like already established professionals talking about their careers, and that is a way to somehow probably motivate early career researchers. The third one was about designing for diversity in astronomy and astrophysics, and this I really enjoyed this one because it was about how to, with all the information that we have from reports and so on, how can we design specific not just activities, but again, guidelines for promoting diversity in astronomy and geophysics. And then the fourth one, which was a plenary talk, and you talk that was the explanation of this report about bullying and harassment in this sector. Finally, as we have all of this, which again, I want to be quite transparent, I think that this is really good work, really, really good for identifying what are the main needs. Despite, I know that, for example, sometimes we can think that maybe governance is not that important because it's just a policy document and so on, but it's extremely important to have a governance document or a policy and strategies just to define the guidelines and the priorities. And the groups are extremely good for obviously somehow centralizing those discussions and securing that that actions are being taken into consideration, and it's not just in the paper, it's not just in the policy or in the plan. It is actually a real responsibility of the different groups, or in this case of the Royal Astronomical Society. And we can say that at some point they're crucial for accountability, and the reports are crucial for identifying all these issues. But still, I think that we need to look at this and just say, okay, how can we improve? We already have the numbers. We are seeing that we have improvement in some areas, but we recognize that we have all this information about, for example, workplace environment, how people are feeling in this places. Is this a direct, for example, leaving their careers or not really continuing in certain paths like in astronomy or astrophysics and so on? Is that directly related to what is happening in the workplace or not? How can we improve retention and so on? So for us, there are certain things that we need to, with all this information that we have, there are certain things that we need to improve. And that is our plan for it, together with the strategy. That will be our plan for from this year to 2029. One thing has to do with the policy. If you look at the policy again, as I said at the beginning, is a 4 pages policy. I think that we need to policies are always, we need to edit them. We cannot have a single document for ages. So it will be interesting to see more details in this policy with concrete actions. It doesn't have to be an action plan, but somehow it has to include some concrete actions regarding what we have identified in the last reports. And I think that the notion of intersectional perspective, it has to be there as well. We need to have more plans for action. Indeed, representation, as we can see in the reports, is really important. We have to improve in ethnicity, gender identity, and LGBTQ+. We also need to include or improve our representation in terms of socioeconomic backgrounds. And this is something that the education and outreach plan is already there. But basically, the idea is working with the schools with a high proportion of low-income families, and then promote that astronomy is not necessarily restricted to, for example, private schools, or that the majority of for example, students come from private schools. And we also need to include that idea of intersectional perspective. So that could be, for example, low-income families and from low-income families and underrepresented groups in terms of ethnicity, for example. So also we need to include learning disabilities and learning differences, such as neurodiversity, and that hasn't been covered that well in our action plans, so that has to be included. Probably that has been included more in education. So diversity, or EDI, is also included in the education department in the Royal Astronomical Society, but that has to be improved for short. It's the same with visual, hearing, and mobility impairments. So that's the issue has been with accessibility. And I think that has to do with, for example, what is covered in the strategy plan. That has to do with, for example, access to archives. And I think a really good question is, are we offering or are we accessible in terms of information, in terms of archives and so on? So, for example, visual impairment researchers or fellows. And I think that is a question that we need to address as soon as possible. And that this also has to do with infrastructure. So, for example, is our building completely accessible, or is just accessible in just one part, and so on. So I think that this is something that we will include. I know that we will include all these points in the meeting that we have next week with the committee. So probably we will include this in our plans for the next year. As I was saying, the strategy is to attract diverse scientists, but also to retain. So the harassment, bullying, and mental health situation, and again, all the issues that we've been identifying in the last reports. Now we need to act with concrete actions for retention. And I think that this is something that we've been a little bit weak with, but we will definitely include that. And I think in general, this is pretty much what I wanted to cover in this presentation. Probably was too quick, but and I didn't go into detail with all these statistics and everything. But I invite you all to look at this work. It has been quite good, to ask questions, and if you have any suggestions, I'm really happy to add everything. Critiques, suggestions, I'm just for my work. So if I can just help the society with this, please tell me everything, and I'm really happy to hear that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Marieta. That was excellent. I see a lot of work and a lot of documentation existing, which is a very valuable resource for most of us, actually, to read and to implement all the action items which are mentioned there, or to learn from all the surveys that have been conducted by the Royal Astronomical Society. So that's great. Thank you very much for this talk.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, open for questions. Any questions?
Recommendations, suggestions?
Yes.
No?
Yes, we have one hand raised by Matthias Macker. Yes, Matthias, please.
Yeah, hi Marieta. Thanks a lot for the really nice presentation. I was wondering one thing in particular about this demographic survey that you did, and I understand it's not published yet, so maybe you can't say. But so obviously you looked at gender, and you somehow also looked at ethnicity, I've seen. But can you tell me what demographics you actually got? And so the reason why I ask is, at my home institute or department, we would also want to do a demographic survey.
Yeah.
Because it's easy for us to get the gender balance, because this is in the staff files, but diversity is so much more than just gender. But we have the issue with that, as soon as we mention surveying for demographics, people get very, very sensitive, and it's like, no, you can't map like where people come from, you can't map disabilities, and we keep running into this wall. We haven't found a good way, and so I was wondering how you guys, what did you actually map, and how did you go about this?
So, yes, you're right. This is very sensitive. There are certain things that you cannot, right, actually ask, but I wasn't part of the research group, because I said, I just joined a month ago, so I've been trying to keep up with everything. But I have if you let me see quite quickly, because I have here all the report. So I don't have right now the specifics, because it's not available. But what I can do, if you like me to, I can ask for that, and I can send you the information, not the report, but I can send you the specific. Will that work?
Yeah, so I mean, I can also, I guess the report will be published sometime soonish. So
Well, I cannot tell you if that's going to, for me, it's going to be soon. I cannot tell you when, but but it will be soon. But what I can do is I can provide you this information quite soon.
Yep.
So I can ask for the specific what was covered.
So that would be great. And so one thing that would be really interesting to know is whether, because you said it's a research group, because so one thing that we've been thinking is that we would actually have to hire or engage a psychology or a sociology research group that makes a project out of it and goes through proper ethics approval to sort of
Yes.
safeguard ourselves from not giving the idea that we as an employer want to map
Yes.
different identities in order to, I don't know what people think we would do with them, but you know, everything can be interpreted in a negative way. So so it would be interesting to know if they went through some kind of ethics approval to have on hand to say like, no, this is good work that we're doing. That would be really good.
If it's the same that we are doing at universities, so yes, well, I think we definitely went for ethical approval. It is an external one. It is an external policy research not think tank, but it's external. So I can confirm that it's external, and but working with people from the society. But I can send you that information. I'm just including here your name, so I can send you that information. I can ask, because I don't want to give you information and then I'm not sure about that. So I prefer to ask directly, and I can send you the information by email. What do you think?
That would be really nice. Thanks a lot,
Great.
and thanks for a great presentation.
Can I get your email for like in the chat?
Yeah, I'll send it in it.
Thank you,
Sure. Thanks.
Okay, we'll go ahead with any other questions from the audience. Yeah, I mean, I have one question to start with. So I see there's a lot of documentation and survey that you've talked about. What about training sessions? Is RAS conducting some kind of training sessions where they're really, you know, kind of educating the community with, you know, all sorts of good practice that one should follow while hiring, while organizing events? And what happens when people give you some kind of feedback? What actions do you take on those feedbacks?
First thing about this is great, because training, yes, training is included, and again, Sheila conducted a lot or organized a lot of training sessions and so on. We are right now we are not conducting any training session, but it's part of our proposal, and we will present that again. Very happy that Karen is here because I will meet her next week. First time that we will have a meeting together in the committee. But we have the idea of continuing with training, particularly in everything that has to do with EDI. But beyond, again, one of the things that we want to do, or at least one of the things that I would propose, is the idea of two things. One, understanding like the whole spectrum of what we talk about when we talk about EDI, and then that more like theoretical level, but then to have these specific ideas that working with you for plans of action instead of just beyond the identification. So that would be, for example, training, as I said, more theoretical, but also how to, for example, use correct language, right? Also, how to address people, and then something that we have for the plan, like a future plan, is including more training in those areas that we are probably weaker compared to, not necessarily LGTB plus, not necessarily gender, but we probably were weaker in terms of impairments. So that is something that is in my agenda, and I would like to conduct that and just have training for that. Okay. To invite, and also, and to invite not just members of staff, but also the fellows, because we have really big network of fellows. And so early career researchers, or probably sometimes fellows as well, but that also involves having more communications and more involvement in general with fellows.
Okay. Yeah, so that was about training sessions. What about the feedbacks? Because we do get a lot of feedbacks at the IAU Women in Astronomy working group, and serious ones. The question is, how do you handle these feedbacks? Are you taking any actions against the harassers, the bullies, or how are you trying to protect the person who have like put faith in you and have said all sorts of very sensitive information or problems that they have faced?
I'm just aware of the harassment and bullying situation. So we have an anonymous forum. This is the only thing that I'm aware of right now, but we have an anonymous forum in our website, and it's completely anonymous, and it works because sometimes we can say that it's anonymous, but then it's not necessarily anonymous, right? Yeah. But in this case, it is anonymous, and that is the way to get feedback, or like to say, well, this is happening in our workplace, or this is happening in my area. But apart from that, I'm not aware of the other feedback or the other ways that we are getting feedback in other fields. But at least everything that is related to harassment and bullying, that's probably the official way, or the official document, or the way that we have to receive that feedback. But about the other type of feedback, more that is not necessarily that formal and probably goes beyond that, I'm not aware of how feedback has been handled. But I can ask again, the same as Matthew. So I can ask, and maybe I can send you that info.
Yeah.
For like clarification.
Okay.
Let me just put it here.
Great, thanks. Yeah, that's something that we want to actually, collaborate on, and to understand how to really tackle these kind of issues which come to you and you don't know what to do with that, or you can, of course, take certain action.
And when you talk about feedback, you just to clarify, you mean, because obviously feedback could be reporting a situation, like which is the anonymous form that we have for harassment, blah blah, reporting a situation, but then the feedback of what we are doing. So maybe we're not doing or maybe we're not including things and so on. Oh.
Sorry, Marieta, it looks like Mamta has frozen for a moment.
Yeah. Now she's back.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
now she's back. Sorry, I was just asking because I was answering the question, and then was like, well, there could be feedback like in terms of reporting something, and then on like feedback in terms of like we are not including or we are missing blah blah blah. You were referring to that one, or oh, you were referring to that one. Oh, you said sorry. The other is more like report. Yes, sorry. In terms of feedback, no, I'm not. Well, we have, for example, again, those are things that are being talked or covered during the discussions that we have with the committees. But it's not just about, action, it's about updates and things that we need to include. But apart from that, I'm not aware of the other feedback. But there's something that I can look
Yes.
at as well. Yeah, it's very, very important. Do you have any ideas of that, or?
I mean, we did receive many. I mean, I did receive many since last 3 years. And when you say it's anonymous, then some people who are really very much harassed, they put their names and they want to talk to you. And so it's all about building trust and really about taking actions which they can see that's happening. And only then they are going to continue with you. So that's one way. And of course, then you have the names of the people more or less set in a coded way. And you try to at least not to encourage them in the meetings, or not to give them, invite them for talks and stuff like this, the one who are really bullying or harassing. So that's one way of doing it, but there should be other ways. And I think one of the ways is also to, I mean, that always comes to IAU, but I think each astronomical society could also take actions at their level. So that's one way of handling it.
Yes, I think we just see, I think we just have the, or that I'm aware of. It's just the anonymous form.
Yes.
Just that. But yeah, you're right. Thank you.
Okay. Any other question? Okay, so one more question from my side then. What about interest in collaborating with other astronomical societies? Or is RAS working alone? Because of course they have a very well-established network. On top of that, their EDI activities are funded. So that's another reason why they are well-established in this whole activity, as
Yes.
compared to other astronomical societies where I think EDI activities are not funded. It's all voluntary level work which people are doing, so they may not be as organized and as effective as RAS. So is it possible to collaborate? And if yes, on what aspects we could collaborate?
I think, yeah, we are always looking for collaborations. That's just totally, yes, collaboration in not just in terms of like meetings, but also like proper, like real projects. So we are open for collaborations. Right now we just have, I would say that the most collaborative one has to do with the LGTB plus physics network that we are together with the Institute of Physics and the Royal Society of Chemistry, and that is quite active. And that is an example of the collaboration. So that network works, is one of the groups that we have in that network. It's really effective. So I think that we can think about other ways to collaborate as well. We would love to do that, particularly with other astronomical societies, because not royal, sorry, but with all their astronomical societies. But because what we are doing so far is obviously trying to map, and again, this has been what we have with the reports, because we're mapping the situation and not just in astronomy. So I personally think that for me would be really interesting to see what is the specific situation in astronomy and astrophysics. We have some data to make the difference, and some specific data in astronomy and in astrophysics, but we could go deeper, so we can go further on that understanding. Particularly, for example, women in physics, that is something that we still need to cover outside. We need to cover that a little bit more.
Yeah.
So yes, we are open to that.
Right. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so that will be great if we could come up with the IAU Women in Astronomy and RAS project together. That was one of my interests, to see how we can go ahead and develop something. Okay. Anything else? Any other question? All right. Yes. Okay, so if not, then, oh yes, there is, okay, there's one comment from Helen Brown. No question, but thanks for a great talk. Okay, thank you very much, Helen. Okay, so I just have one last question for you, and then we will free you. And that's, what was your motivation to go ahead with this kind of work as a diversity officer and talking about these very issues, which are very fundamental, very sensitive at workplace, and also very challenging? So why did you put your efforts in this direction?
That's a very good question. I've worked with particularly with women in science, and I'm happy to see that Camila Navarrete is here, because we've worked. She's also from Chile, and we've worked together in actually the last project that we had in Chile about women in science. And it's a research project. So I've had experience with women in science, talented women in science, and so on. So then, but I'm also a policy person. So I think that at some point when I was just doing policy, then there's always this curiosity to do something more about research that is I'm not saying the policy is not attractive enough, but that gives you more insight of, what are the real issues that people working in the workplace. Also because I'm a woman, and I can see, I have I've faced certain things in the workplace, and I can relate to obviously from another discipline, but I can relate to the things that other women face. And then I wanted to explore also because I got really curious with all the results that we have throughout the years with representation, with experiences in the workplace and so on. And then when I had this opportunity, because unfortunately Sheila, again, she's great, she left, and I said I would love to do it, just to get more into, just to continue with what we've been doing in Chile and to see what is the reality in other contexts, because this is a different context in the UK. But then you can see a lot of similarities in terms of what are the main issues in EDI and related aspects. And then obviously because you work with women, which has been my case, women, but then you start seeing, okay, this is just a very tiny part of the analysis, because you have this binary conception that just like women, men, but then you start seeing all the other things and you realize what is that this at the end is a very complicated sociological analysis. And I think that caught all my attention. Probably I'm not really good at because well, we have to be honest, I'm not really good at conducting, for example, educational activities and so on. But if you give me the data, I can work with it quite well, and to identify things for example, policies at the workplace, not necessarily at the national level, but policies or guidelines to improve the work environment for EDI or for like underrepresented groups. So yes, I think it was curiosity and a challenge just for more data analysis and research and understanding things. So
yeah. That's great. That's very nice. And it's very important to get involved into such activities as a young woman, for example, to actually support your own work environment and to make it better. That's what you're doing. So that's great. Thank you very much again. It was great talking to you and listening to your talk and all the efforts that you're doing. And I'm sure we will collaborate in future.
I'll be waiting for that, for sure.
So are there any questions for her, the final ones? If not, then we'll stop here and we'll thank everybody. Right. No questions. All right. So thank you very much, everybody, and see you next time. Thanks a lot, Marieta.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye. Bye. Thank you.
Bye. All right. So I'll stop here.